Hello and welcome to the Warmer Podcast. I'm your host Dan, and joining me today is our very special guest, Ratnu.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. Ratnu, for those that don't know, is the #1 Chaos Knight player in the world, which makes you top war dog.
Just about.
Yeah. So he's going to help us look a little bit more in detail at this book here, the new Chaos Knight Codex. So we're going to take a look at some of the new detachments, the army rules changed as well. There's some very tasty enhancements and strats in there. So Ratnu's going to take us through all of that. And you also used to be a Necron player, didn't you? So
Yes, back in the day.
yes, this isn't actually a podcast. This is an intervention. You've got your friends and family are in the kitchen there. They're going to come in and tell you how disappointed they are.
Absolutely.
But no, Ratnu's going to help us guide us through how to deal with this new threat, because Chaos Knights have massively changed, haven't they?
Yeah, I like to think of sort of playing Necrons, then Chaos Knights, sort of graduating from small robots to slightly bigger ones.
Small angry robots to bigger ones. I can see a theme there, yeah. Good. Well, let's dive into it then, and let's get. I think the first question I want to ask you is about big changes, really, because the way that Chaos Knights have been played in the Index was very kind of limited, I guess. There was one way that you could really play them, wasn't there? Mm-hmm. And that's massively changed now.
Yes, yeah. So I think historically the main build that all the Chaos Knight players competitively would play was just War Dog spam.
Yeah.
So you'd see all your lists of like 12 War Dogs, 13 War Dogs, and if you were an opponent seeing a Chaos Knight list, the only kind of list diversity you would see is it 12 War Dogs and demons, or is it 13 War Dogs and no demons?
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. And whereas I think it's fair to say that Big Knights are definitely back. There is an awful lot of. In fact, am I right in thinking that you have to, in most detachments, you have to take at least one now? Is that right?
Yeah. So the one character War Dog that existed in the Index no longer exists.
Oh, right.
In the book. So outside of the War Dog handpack lance, there is no way of running just an entire War Dog based army.
Right.
So you have to have your big stompies.
Big toys are back on the table. That's nice to see, to be fair. It's been as a from the other side of the table, it was getting stale's probably not quite right. It was predictable is probably a better word, and I guess it must have felt the same. Did it feel the same playing them as well?
Mm-hmm. I sort of often joke with like my sort of friends and practice partners that I'd played so many games of War Dogs, like I'd have dreams about just moving them in my sleep. Sort of playing nearly 250 games of one kind of build.
Wow.
And one kind of archetype. It's very much sort of going through the motions, at least in the early game. So having the flexibility, having the opportunity now to do lots of different things is quite nice and quite refreshing in many respects.
Yeah, there's you had a massive smile on your face when I saw you at the club. We go to the same gaming club, West Allotment Wildlands, occasionally, and you rocked up with, was it 5 Big Knights last time I saw you?
Certainly was.
Yeah.
So 5 Big Knights with a kind of smattering of demons.
Nice.
So just going from one extreme stat check to the other extreme stat check.
And what about detachment-wise then? You mentioned that there is still a War Dog detachment in there. Are we still going to see that, do you think?
I think that some players will really like lots of the tools that it offers.
Yeah.
It lost a lot of what made it kind of competitively viable in some respects, instead of in the sense of just War Dogs being move big, OC big. Mm-hmm. It's now gone from move slightly less flexibly without walk through walls to OC slightly less.
Right.
But it's gained a lot of other tools. So you've now got fallback, shoot and charge. You've got reactive moves. You've got uppy downy. You've got shoot on death, fight on death. So it's gone from that mobility and OC based army to more of a trading one, where you can put a dog out, it dies, but it shoots or fights on death. So you trade 2 for 1. 2 for 1,
very, very powerful. And that gives you an awful lot more of that flexibility that you were lacking in the past. There was, like you said, I mean, I knew almost in advance that when my opponent was going to spend the CP to walk 2 dogs through a wall, and that was basically, as long as you knew roughly how to deal with that, you stood a chance. Whereas it sounds like now you've got an awful lot more tricks up your sleeve in the Dog's Detachment.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's quite nice in that respect, in the sense that, things that make 40k armies good are mobility and OC. So having lots of ways to improve that mobility and have that flexibility as to where you can position, particularly with scary-ish. Chassis like war dogs can be quite fun to play.
Movement wins you games. People keep drilling that into me. I haven't learned it yet. I'm still playing slower Necrons, but movement does win you games. What are other detachments? So when you ran, obviously you ran the big knights at the club. That obviously wasn't the war dog detachment. Which one was that?
So that one's called Lords of Dread.
Yeah, that's a great name.
Yeah, and it essentially just makes your big stompy robots bigger and stompier. And it gives them a lot of nice tools like -1 damage. You get reroll hits and wound rolls of 1 against monsters and vehicles. That goes to full rerolls against Titanic. Ooh. So when you're sort of staring down your less spiky, less scary Imperial Knight cousins, you've got a few tools in your toolkit.
I was going to ask you about that because you've been the kind of the poorer relation in those two throughout Index Hammer this edition. Do you feel like you can at least hold your own now, or perhaps have got an edge? I don't know.
I would have said that until last Wednesday when the Imperial Knights points changed.
Yeah.
And, Canis went down to 380 and now they can field 5 big knights plus stuff, or like 4 big knights and more stuff. I think that Imperial Knights are a phenomenal army the way that they're currently pointed.
Yeah.
The fact that they've now got more wounds, so more opportunities to proc their feel no pain.
Yes.
And their army or detachment ability to reroll a single hit roll and wound roll per activation is really good, because one of the things that Knights armies are in general is low volume but really high quality.
Yes.
So if you've got your 1 or 2 melter shots, if they more reliably connect, then that's great. Whereas as poor humble Chaos Knight War Dogs without our rerolls, I played a tournament game last month and I pointed 4 brigands at the Lion. He saved a CP for his 3-up invul in case he needed to rotate. Fired every single melter shot. Not a single one even made it through to the saving throw stage.
Oh no! It's always an interesting game when the dice betray you like that. I had a game like that. Actually, it was actually on Friday at the club where the first turn I pulled dreadful secondaries and I just had whiffed, and I'm like, right, what? Now I've got a game on my hands. How do I turn this around? Also, I mean, you mentioned melters there. You lost a little bit of range off them, I think, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. So they used to be 24, and now they've gone down to 18, which I think is a positive change for opponents, naturally.
Yeah.
It means that if you bring in a dog out of strat reserves, you can't get into melter range. So
right, because you're outside of 9. Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's interesting. And I think it's, it is with the new terrain layouts as well. It's going to change. It's going to change how you have to play those units. And you mentioned, you touched on before, OC is the OC game for Knights is very different now as well, isn't it? Chaos Knights, well, Knights in general. So run me through this. What a War Dog? What was the OC on that?
So a month ago, you as a Knights opponent would have seen 12, 13 War Dogs. They'd all be OC8, T10. Yeah. And they would only bracket their weapon skill, ballistic skill.
Yes.
Now you are 14 wounds, but you are toughness 9, and your OC goes from 6 baseline now, as opposed to 8, to then 3 OC when you're 5 wounds or less.
Wow. So that's a huge change for you guys, because you can't just now pass a battle shock test and hold a point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the kind of OC element and the way that Knights play primary has changed quite a lot. Previously, you could play in ways that didn't rely on dice because you had movement big, OC big. But now, you're kind of in positions where you actually have to deal damage, or you have to invest in durability to try and keep your knights alive and keep them sort of healthy enough that, all these dogs are just kind of waving their banners on the little circles.
And T9 is an interesting breakpoint because, like at strength 5 and upwards is wounding you on 5s instead of 6s, which is great for a lot of stuff in the Necron codex, as we'll come on to. But the other side of it is the moving up from 12 wounds on a little dog to 14 is a break point, because it would have been 2 shots from the Locust Heavy Destroyer, 6 damage each. Now it's 3.
Yeah.
It would have been 3 shots from a Doomsday Arc at damage 4, and now it's 4 of those as well. So all of a sudden it becomes, while we have the assets to deal with those, we've got to invest more of them.
Mm-hmm. And from a kind of Knight player perspective, it really is quite interesting, because you get more durable against things like lethal hits, which don't care about your toughness.
Yeah.
You get more durable against things like mortal wounds, against like anti-vehicle X, because
I like your haywires and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But from an opponent's perspective, it's actually changed the game quite a bit, because I think what Games Workshop has been trying to do is trying to make data sheets and trying to make profiles that people like to interact with and feel like they have a bit more agency with. So a toughness change is quite a nice way of doing that, in the sense that, you know, as opposed to just your small arms being completely useless and your medium arms also being completely useless, it's now gone from just your small arms being crap. But Strength 5, there's a lot of stuff that's Strength 5 in the game, like Immortals, Strength 5. God knows what other kind of Necron stuff is Strength 5.
No, there's a few around there where it will make a difference. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So that becoming twice as effective, because you're making twice as many successful wound rolls, is really good.
And has the same happened with the big knights then? What's happened with the toughness of those guys?
So big knights have gone down from T12 to T11, but have gained a few more wounds to compensate.
Yeah.
So they used to be 22 wounds, and now they're 26. Or the Sarasta chassis, like your Lancer, like your Atropos, have gone up to 28, and the big kind of gunboat Tyrant has gone up to 28 as well.
Nice.
But T11 is a really good breakpoint for lots of armies, because Strength 6 is now twice as effective.
Yeah.
So things like Wraiths, twice as many wounds through.
I hadn't thought about Wraiths. I was thinking about Locust Destroyers and also the Locust Heavies with the anti-infantry gun, the Mythic Exterminators, their Strength 6. But Wraiths, Wraith meta might be back. We'll see. And so we talked about dogs a little bit, and that detachment. Is there any on the big knight side? What detachments are you enjoying or are you expecting to see?
So I played the most games of Lords of Dread, which is the big knight one, and that's got a really flexible kind of suite of tools and stratagems and enhancements. I'm not sure about all the other kind of books, but I've never seen 6 enhancements on one page before for one detachment. So I think it's clear that they're trying to make your kind of character knights feel like their own kind of entities and their own kind of sort of like it's a bit like Greater Demon spam.
Yeah,
but robot themed.
Yeah, but I think it feels appropriate, really. You know, they are these imposing, you know, characters in the game, and they should have those extra toys to play with, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting finding out which you know, all of those various combos and whatnot that you can, all the things you can do with them, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we covered off big changes and some of the detachments that are pretty fun. What else we want to talk about? I think I wanted to ask you a bit about how to deal with. We touched on it slightly, but as a Necron player, and a lot of the audience are Necron players, we're all interested in what this threat poses to us, but then also how do we counter it, and what's the way the game has changed now in terms of how knights are going to play. What do we need to be looking to do to deny them points and to ensure that we score?
So I think from a Necron's perspective, the game has probably gotten slightly easier.
Right.
In the sense that, you know, you might see kind of 3 or 4, even 5 or 6 big knights across the table from you, but things the Necrons already do well is being really flexible. So you've got Hypercrypt with your uppy downy. Mm-hmm. You can sort of project threat anywhere on the board. You've got Star Shatter with your sort of like astronomical extinction level event, sort of level of firepower.
Point at something and make it dead. Yeah.
It just ceases to exist. And even things like Awakened with your kind of hyper durable Necron Warrior bricks with your -1 to hit, your 4-up invul, your Cryptothors that give it the feel no pain, reactive reanimation. All of these things are really good. So you might expect to see more big knights across from you kind of on the tabletop. But I think Necron players should be quite sort of happy, confident and comfortable in the fact that the things that you have to kill big knights are still really good at killing big knights.
Good.
There are very few ways that knights have mortal wound protection outside of feel no pains.
Right.
So if you just keep a Doomsday Arc still, you roll a few 6s, you are chipping away.
Yeah.
Things that we mentioned, like the Wraiths, like the Mythic Exterminators.
Yeah.
Anything that's Strength 6 is twice as effective.
Yeah, that's a really big change.
And if you're facing things like Armature spam, if you're facing things like War Dog spam, the fact that they bracket OC now means that, you know, if you get them to 5 wounds, which is only dealing 9 wounds as opposed to the 12 that you had to do beforehand, just 2 Necron Warriors will take that point off that dog.
That's big. Yeah. So if I only need I need 2 warriors, 4 OC on a point to take it off a bracketed dog. That massively swings the game in our favour. I'm a little bit more confident now about addressing some of those. I still don't think I'd stand a chance against you, but I'd be interested to find out. And I think the other one I wanted to ask you about, the burning question that's been asked a lot on Necron forums, is the Void Dragon, because in War Dog spam, Void Dragon was very much a go-to. You know, if you ended up if I had a list with the Void Dragon in it and got paired into Chaos Knights, I was quite confident that it was going to do some work. With the access to some of the melters and stuff that the big knights have got, I'm not sure that's still the case. What do you think?
So I think the Void Dragon is just fundamentally a good data sheet.
Yeah.
In the sense that it does one thing and it does one thing really well.
Yeah.
It's also quite durable. You've got your half damage. You've got all your 4-up invul, 5-up feel no pain, etc., etc. So it's very hard to kind of one phase that kind of data sheet. In terms of Chaos Knights facing it, there are still some tools that we have access to that are pretty good. You may see some War Dogs, even if there's not as many. So if you get slightly unlucky and the melter pops off, then it can really pop off.
Right.
One of the things that I've been having in my lists is a Despoiler. So this is the kind of double gun, flexible Chaos Knight data sheet.
Yeah.
And that's got access to 2d3 times 2 melter 6 shots.
Right, okay.
So, you know, with things like a relic to give it assault or a relic to give it uppy downy and deep strike, you can position in places where that Void Dragon becomes less of a threat. And, you know, with melter 6 and 4d3 shots, there's a reasonable chance that it might actually take it out in a single round.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think for Necron players, it's not just about how much damage it deals, it's how much damage your opponent thinks it might deal.
Right.
So the Void Dragon for me is an 18-inch keep away zone.
Right.
It's saying to any Knights player, any kind of whole spam army player, that the second you come within 18, things are going to be really, really tough and things are going to be really, really rough for you.
Yeah.
So it forces either a massive overcommitment, which lets the rest of your army do its thing.
Yeah.
Or it creates that zone which you have safe secondaries, you have safe primary, and you create those decision points for your opponent.
That's interesting. Yeah. He is a valuable deterrent. I mean, I think he's tipping about 300 points, which is that's roughly the equivalent to an Abominant now, isn't it?
Nearly, yeah.
Yeah. Are they 320?
Yeah, so the Abominant now is 325 points.
325, right.
Which is less than 2 Brigands was a month ago.
I mean, do you think the points... It's early days yet, but do you think the points might need some adjustments? Yeah.
Probably. I think that any world which lets you put 6 data sheets of that caliber on the tabletop is probably slightly too meta warping and slightly too meta skewing. It doesn't matter if they're any good or not, but the fact that they can play the primary game in things like Lords of Dread with sticky OC5.
All right.
You've got access to -1 damage. You've got offensive stratagems with the rerolls. You can do mortal wounds in multiple phases.
Yeah.
I think that Imperial Knight's probably slightly more egregious with all the access to the feel no pains and the rerolls. But I think even having 6 Knights on the tabletop, for kind of casual players and for players that aren't necessarily teching for it, I think it's probably a little bit unhealthy for the game.
Yes, and I think that's a fair point. I mean, the nature of Knights is they're always going to, I guess, or in a lot of cases, they're going to be a stat check, you know, for a lot of factions. That's just how it is because of what they are. But it does feel, egregious is a great word to use. It does feel a little egregious at the moment. It feels like you can fit a lot on the table, but enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, I think we'll see how the results pan out in the coming weeks, but. I'm friends with a few kind of Imperial Knights players, and we'll sort of joke that your list start at 1620 because you're always including Canis at 380.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's too good to leave at home at the moment.
Even as an ally, you know, the amount that he offers, the amount that he gives is phenomenal.
Yeah. Excellent. And in terms of your play as a Chaos Knight, as I mentioned at the beginning, you were in the last tournament season, the ITC ranked by points, you know, the most points, and you were the top scoring Chaos Knight player in the entire world, which is an incredible achievement. How would you feel about doing that again next season? Is that the goal?
I think sort of going into the season, I didn't really care that much. I just wanted to play toy soldiers and and have fun, much to the annoyance of my wife, of all my kind of colleagues that I was pestering to take annual leave so I could go to more events and things.
Yeah.
So I think I felt quite lucky in a sense to be able to kind of get to that upper echelon of, having a nice little trophy and whatnot.
They do give you a trophy. That's nice.
It's got a sort of glow, like LED thing. It changes colour. It's really nice. It just sits on my fireplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have it on my fireplace. Yeah, but I mean, that's an interesting point because it kind of leads into the next question. Was like, you've got to put an awful lot of work in to get to that kind of, to even be in with a shout of finishing a season as the top player, and I guess that you have to really be enjoying what you're doing to put that much work in. But it did take, you must have played an awful lot of games.
Yeah. So I think we mentioned earlier that kind of before the Codex, I played probably 250 games of Chaos Knights in 10th.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of games. I would sort of describe it as the sort of Nando's or the KFC of Warhammer, where it's just one thing, but you try and do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a strength in a way to just have that mono build, because it means that you can refine it. It means that you can adapt your play style to lots of different situations and lots of different circumstances. So in terms of the actual kind of games that I was playing, I'd probably say 1 or 2 practice games a week.
Yeah.
And try and get to a tournament maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, even if it's RTT or a GT, which, is hard alongside a full-time job. It's hard alongside, maintaining like life commitments.
Yeah.
I didn't see my parents for a good few months.
But it is once you've done it, nobody can take it away from you. But you're feeling still in love with Chaos Knights enough to have a good tilt at it again in the next season or this season.
Yeah, I think that sort of life can overtake you in some respects. So like getting married earlier this year, and we're like looking at buying a house. So lots of kind of life and like exams and things. So life kind of overtakes it in a way.
Yeah.
And being in a kind of very fortunate position where it's not ever something that I was aiming for, I can now say, been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Yes.
And
the trophy.
Yeah. So if it happens again, great. If not, fine.
Yeah. I think it's a great attitude to have. I think people forget like this is first and foremost is a hobby, and that's all about the passion, isn't it? And having fun with it, which a lot of the time, and I guess I did as well. I played non-competitive 40k for a lot of years, and I think we, as filthy casuals, have ingrained prejudices about the tournament scene when we've never played it. Like it's viewed as by outsiders as being quite sterile and very kind of number crunchy focused, but it's actually quite chilled and lots of fun once you get into it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes the perception of tournaments and kind of events and even the word competitive have quite negative connotations associated with it.
Yeah.
But actually, if you just go to a few tournaments, it's full of normal people.
Yeah.
Or
no less normal than any other Warhammer events. But I know what you mean. And speaking of events, we've had a couple of big changes lately, which I wanted to pick your brains about before I let you go if I can. And the first one is the new mission deck, chapter approved mission deck. Obviously, that's been out for a few weeks now. If you were, hopefully, most of you were lucky enough to get one, was a bit of a scramble, as usual. But how are you feeling about that? It's not really it's evolution rather than revolution, I guess, is how I describe it.
Yeah. It's tweaks, it's refining, it's sort of changing things around the edges as opposed to a kind of whole brand spanking new set of missions. Some of the primary changes have been nice, like you being able to terraform objectives which your opponents were already terraformed.
Yeah.
Makes it very much a sort of to and fro game.
It's a much more interactive game that now,
Yeah. And even things like the hidden supplies mission, which means that you only actually start scoring points if you're not holding your home objective. You start having to hold things in no man's land.
Yes.
So it's forcing you to go out and actually interact and play the game. I think where the sort of game has really changed and where the game has really evolved in some respects is that introduction of challenger cards.
Yes.
The fact that they're so flexible, you've got an option of either a very generically useful stratagem or nearly guaranteed 3VP.
Yeah, I think some of the strats are pretty decent as well, but I mean it's early days yet, but I haven't the times when they've come up, it hasn't come up as often as I thought it would, and when it has come up, they've felt quite easy to score.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether the balance is quite right. I mean, it's better than we had gambits, and everyone went, "Oh, this is an interesting mechanic," and then we realised it wasn't very good. And then we had secret missions, and everyone went, "Oh, this is better than gambits," but then we realised they weren't also great. They were quite easy. And once you knew what the options were, they were quite easy to counter. I felt, but in these new cards feel like the novelty value is still there, but they do. I'm not sure that they've still nailed it. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think because it's early days, there's still kind of scope for further refinement and further tweaks and further changes.
Yeah,
I think that, just to give you an example of a practice game that I had last week, I was playing against an opponent who was playing orcs with a stomper and lots of like shooty stuff.
Yeah.
It was on Purge the Foe, and already going second on Purge the Foe is really, really good.
Yeah, it's gold, yeah.
Because you know how many units your opponent's killed, so you just try and kill one more. And my dice have been horrific that whole game. Having 36 shots going to a unit of orc boys and ask him to make 3 saves. It's just
that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's not necessarily what you would want.
No.
And you know, he was spiking, like units were just dying left, right and center. But I was able to win that game purely on the basis of those challenger cards and the fact that I went second.
All right, yeah.
So I had 2 units left alive at the end.
Right.
But you know, being able to score 16 in primary points for killing more and holding more because of things like sticky objectives.
Yeah.
And then having your challenger cards, which just say let you be in places, have a unit of Nurglings, and have something else that's outside your home. That's 2 points out of the 3.
Yeah.
So I think that it would penalise players who get too commanding and too early a lead and play probably a little bit too aggressively, and it probably makes those who are going second even more favoured.
Yeah, certain missions like Purge in particular, like you said, it's going to make it doesn't quite feel like they've got the right balance yet. And when the cards came out, that was one of the things that I flagged was I said this is probably going to change the game, but if you are a better player than me, but if you, then and you can think that far ahead, you are going to be able to game this system quite easily, I think. And maybe that's. I guess the follow-up question to that is what do we do about it? Like you say, it's early days. Can they refine it, or do you think we'll see a point where tournaments just go, we're probably just going to ignore this element of the deck? Because we're already ignoring the twist element of the deck, aren't we?
Yeah. From a sort of game design perspective, I think that there is always going to be a role for those catch-up mechanics.
Yeah.
Games Workshop wants their players to feel like, you know, even if they're down in the dumps, even if they're on the back foot in games, they still want them to have that bit of agency, and they want them to kind of have tools which let them play the game better from that losing position. I think that 6 VP is probably a little bit too less for a way in which you then try and catch up and score points, because that's like 1.5 secondaries, that's 1 primary and a bit. It's very easy to make up those points in later turns anyway. Yeah. So even maybe just increasing that differential to 10 VP.
Well, I like that. Change. Yeah, that's a great idea. I hope you're paying attention there, Games Workshop. Because I mean, to a certain degree, I'm not. I go to the odd event. I'm not a super competitive player, but I'd enjoy that side of the game a lot, increasingly so. But it feels very much like there are 2 games within 40k. There is the competitive game, which we want to be as balanced as possible, because then it's me pitting my skill against yours. But then for the vast majority of hobbyists are not those people, so having those kind of catch-up mechanics or things like the twists and the asymmetric missions, I can see what they're trying to do, I guess.
And it makes games more fun. You know, if you've had a long day at work, you just want to play your kind of fantasy toy soldiers in space with your other mate who wants to play fantasy toy soldiers in space, roll dice and see what happens. That's great. It's so good that there is a mission pack that tries to cater for all those audiences.
100%. Yeah, I think it's definitely felt that element was missing a little bit. I know from a lot of my friends who are filthy casuals that they were feeling that was missing, and they're starting to feel less grumpy about it now, or hopefully happier about it now. And I think the The other big change has been that in the UK, certainly our tournament body, if you like, the UKTC, has created some new terrain packs, hasn't it? Which are so different to what we used to. How are you? What are your early thoughts about those? Because you've got a few games under your belt now, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. So I think firstly, any change is good, just because you're doing something different to things that you've already done for the past year. I think that for kind of Chaos Knights in particular, the more war dogs you use, the harder it is probably to play that game as effectively, because those big ruins have gone into the middle. You can't get through them.
Yeah.
So you either got to go all the way around and get move blocked, or use big knights that can go through them in the movement phase.
Right.
So it creates a very kind of different game where if you're running war dogs, you're trying to play them on the flanks, which makes it very easy for your opponent to try and get angles to those flanks, or to put things to stop you moving.
Yeah. It's going to take me a long time. The first thing I noticed was obviously that big terrain in the middle. I was actually playing against Imperial Knights, and he had that issue where he positioned a couple of war dogs, a couple of his armigers there, and then was like, right, just wait there, and as they trot across the battlefield, try and get to where they need to be. But the other one was the firing lanes are just very, very different as well, and that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. I mean, from your perspective, the ability to move knights through that terrain or to position them in it is probably going to be advantageous, is it?
Massively. So one of the single most impactful things is that towering ability, where you can just have a little, like a knight just towing its foot into a ruin, and suddenly that ruin kind of ceases to exist, and it becomes true line of sight. And because the way that some of the ruins are positioned, that's the only thing kind of stopping you from seeing your kind of whole swath of your opponent's army. So I think the mission pack will reward players who get that experience with deployment, get that experience with positioning, and knowing where those lines are.
100%. I'm very excited to try it. I think it does look, you mentioned off camera before, and I agree with you, but it does look, it's like it's going to favour a certain style of play. Talk us through what sort of factions you think are going to benefit the most from that.
So essentially, movement wins games, as we've said. So either fast gun, so things like Tau, which let you advance and be able to get those positions, to get those lines that see into your opponent's deployment zone really early, or kind of melee pressure builds, things like Blood Angels. You can probably hide 1,000 points of Blood Angels in that that ruin, and then suddenly next turn you are on your opponent's home objective, you are in the deployment zone, everything is dead. It's like mega stage, isn't it? It's going to be interesting seeing how that impacts the meta. And I think, speaking of that, we've talked a little bit about big knights are definitely going to be back, which is great. We think Necrons have probably got some tools in the box to deal with those. Some other factions more so perhaps, but whereabouts, given where you are at the moment with your codex and your points, whereabouts do you think you're going to settle in that meta? Are you feeling quite confident? I think that Chaos Knights should probably be a 4-in-1 army at best.
All right.
I think that for the game to be healthy, you should never have knights being too oppressive,
right?
Because it can be so skewing and so kind of warping. I think that we're probably going to be overshadowed by our smoother cousins in the Imperial Knights.
That's the same old story.
But I think what we'll probably see is people running lots of big knights that initially sort of getting all that war dog out of the system. Running Lords of Tread, but then suddenly you go into something like a sort of damage check army like Thousand Suns, like Death Guard, like Blood Angels. Suddenly you just start losing resources a bit too quickly. So I think it'll probably converge around something like Infernal Lance with all the flexibility, or things that I've quite liked, sort of theory crafting, Iconoclast Fiefdom, which is the cultists Grotmus detachment.
Yes. I've only played into that once, and it was a lot of fun. It's very thematic, but you think it's got some legs, do you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The fact that you now have an army rule, in the sense that you can, on that big table that you select, you can have your knights being stealth outside of 18 and just throw cultists forward, so your opponent just hitting cultists for 3 turns with those kind of big knights behind.
Right, nice.
It's a really interesting kind of different dynamic play style.
I'm now going to have to think about how I might deal with that.
You'll never see it on a table.
No, really serious.
Because knight players don't want to paint 70 cultists.
No. This is it. It's how much you want to paint. It's like Death Guard with the Poxwalkers detachment. There are people that we know, Eddie Chater, cough cough, who will paint that many Poxwalkers, and you know, if somebody will paint that many cultists. But yeah, it won't be me. Good. Well, thank you very much. I hope you guys have enjoyed that at home. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate you coming in, being the first guest in the new setup. And I think I've learned a great deal about Chaos Knights from you. Thank you. And I hope you guys at home have as well. I think it's fair to say that we've got it's going to be a really fun, I think, challenge trying to unlock how to counter some of these builds. And it can only be healthy for the game to have this much more diversity in Chaos Knights, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, it's been a real pleasure. You've been a great guest, and hopefully we'll get you back on again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You guys at home, thank you also for joining us. We have a free Discord if you'd like to come and join that. I'll put the link in the description. Also, massive thank you to those Patrons and YouTube channel members who've stuck with us during this transition period. Really appreciate your support, and if any of you would like to join them, I'll also put links in the description as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you.